Good morning, folks. This week, like I said yesterday, we're behind in acknowledging National Eating Disorder Awareness Week due to a blizzard. The blizzard of 2021, and then we had to move an intensive up to last week. And so this week, every day I'm doing a little video on different types of eating disorders and eating disorders in general, and the theme for this year, and I just want to commend and acknowledge the National Eating Disorder Awareness Board. I mean, they do a good job, and anyway, I want to thank them for doing this. And this week's theme, or this year's theme, has been "Everybody has a seat at the table. Come as you are." So. Yesterday I did an overall view, kind of an overview of eating disorders and the different types of eating disorders. And today I want to talk specifically about men with eating disorders. His eating disorders has been sort of acknowledged as a young woman's problem. The little young anorexics or the cheerleaders or the this or that. And, there's been very little focus on men. Today there's more information out everywhere about eating disorders in general than it used to be. Because when I went to treatment in 1985, I was practicing bulimia and didn't have a name for it. And so that is how far we've come. And when I didn't even know they treated people like me until I had an intervention done on me by a friend that his wife was recovering bulimic and anorexic, and he knew to recognize the symptoms that I had. And I'll be eternally grateful for that man. His name is Alan. So I want to talk about men having eating disorders, and I will tell you, they do have them. There are 1 out of 3 people who have eating disorders. 1 out of 3 are men. It's estimated that there's 20 million women in the United States with eating disorders. 20 million women and 10 million men. So that's a lot. That's a lot of men with eating disorders. And many of them go untreated, and I'll tell you why they go untreated and undiagnosed is because they don't seek treatment they put it off. They don't seek treatment with the early symptoms because of the shame around it, the shame of it still being a female disease or an illness or a behavior. And, really that's how the disease of alcoholism was. When in the 1930s, when AA was formed, it was all men. And, there were women at home behind those lace curtains drinking, but they wasn't given permission in those early days to go for help. They just considered low-bottom alcoholics were the only ones, and those were men that had a problem with alcohol. And we know that is so not true today because of lots of research. And, we know that, young teens can be alcoholics. Older people can start drinking in their retirement. So this is the same. We're kind of, a little bit in the same shape that we were in with alcoholism years ago. It's just reversed, where today there are, like I just quoted, 10 million men with eating disorders, and not a lot of them make their way to treatment, and it's due to a lot of shame. And another thing about it, men aren't likely to talk about their symptoms. Women are more likely to talk about them, and there's on college campuses this morning and high school campuses and junior high campuses, they're teaching each other, girls are, how to have eating disorders. But men pretty much keep silent about it for that fear of not being taken seriously. And so there's a lot of shame with men still with eating disorders. Also, males are told in our society, as women, we get stigmatized that, women need to look a certain way. But men also, in our society, men are told to, they should be tall and lean and muscular and built well. That's kind of put into their brains from childhood. We talk about Barbie dolls and how that was really the beginning in a lot of ways of kind of the same era that eating disorders really started becoming recognized. The body of a Barbie doll is in no way, shape, or form a true shape of a mature woman's body. Also, it's been stated that the Barbie dolls could have had an early influence on sex addiction. So, along with Barbie, there were Ken dolls, and those Ken dolls were lean, tall, muscular, and then look at the G.I. Joe dolls. So, my point is, society tells us a lot about how we ought or should be. So, that mentality of needing to be muscular can lead to overexercise. Men can get into bodybuilding, and then they can get into dieting and cutting out too many calories, particularly carbs. And in today's time, that's very, very prevalent. They also get into diet pills really more readily in a lot of ways than women do, because they want a quick fix, and they'll do a lot of buying over the counter. Not so much going to the doctor and asking for diet pills, but it's a big industry for men buying over the counter products for weight loss or muscle building, and then also steroids. And they can also be bought on the black market. I mean, it's like any other drug. But when men get into this, they'll do anything to get their body in shape, much like your women with eating disorders. Always that look is wanting to look a certain way. And so males with body issues, they have a lot of shame and like I said, discomfort in sharing anything about the behavior, because they get to thinking in their mind that it's more of a feminine issue and that it's a weakness. They're weak if they acknowledge it. And so the emotional characteristics of a male eating disorder person is lots of depression. It's there's they get into social isolation. Now, this really falls under the category of anorexic men, and we've treated some, and I'll tell you what, it's the hardest population to treat, an anorexic man, because like I said earlier, they don't seek treatment until they're pretty low, that they have gone down pretty far in the disease. And that mindset is there, and they have such a fear of gaining weight. And I keep talking about the shame. They have a lot of shame. There's a lot of depression, and there is that social isolation. They will begin to isolate and be by themselves, and because they have so much shame about their body. And then they'll have some degree of sexual dysfunction that will be brought on by the eating disorder. And then, still the number one symptom of any with anorexia, with most eating disorders, is one word, and that's called control. Whether you're man, woman, child, it's about control. Because people who have eating disorders have a feeling they can't control what's going on in their life, but they can control what goes on in their mouth. So control is really a big symptom, and this is where when a person comes in for treatment, it's really about working with them on their self-esteem and boundaries, which is codependency, because that's been set up at an early age with any eating disorder person, and they don't necessarily know how to set boundaries. They set walls. They become very secretive about what they do. And then this is a category that it still concerns me that this is sort of the category that I'm going to talk about that a lot of people don't address. They address anorexia, they address bulimia, which is the binge purge cycle. And then, we finally have got a diagnosis into the DSM that 5, that is the catalog, like I said yesterday, for mental diagnosis. And so they've put binge eating in there. But nowhere do they include morbid obesity, compulsive overeating, and that's what we find the most with men. And they do have a lot of shame about it, I believe. And now we'll see them coming to a 4-day intensive. They come for something else. Maybe stress or their codependency. And then we will, through education, a lot of times they will diagnose themselves. But it is a category that, of course, is after my own heart, because that's what I suffered so much, was for years, since age 4, until I went to treatment, was the compulsive overeating that would result in obesity. Obesity and carrying around that excess weight and the shame of it. And I know every eating disorder brings its shame and that type of thing. But and I will tell you, I don't have an anorexic bone in my body, so I can't speak to what it feels like to be an anorexic. But the people that I have treated, I don't hear the shame about their bodies. They'll have some, but it's mostly driven to perfection, wanting to be thinner. And so the obese people, the compulsive overeaters, your food addicts, and in men too. I mean, you look around. I mean, our country is eating itself literally to death. We have the highest rate of obesity of any country in the world. And men are obese, but somehow they get a hall pass about they're not. I don't believe they're made fun of as much as women. I will tell you this. I believe men that grow up to be overweight, many of them were overweight as children. And even, your anorexics and your bulimic men, a lot of times were overweight as children. And what happened was they were made fun of. And somewhere along the line, they made a decision they were going to get that weight off. Or maybe they played a certain sport where they had to meet a weight check. Wrestlers, oh my goodness, now we're in West Texas and we're all about football. But we've treated wrestlers from other parts of the country, and many, they encourage bulimia because they have the strict weight regimen that they have to meet to be in a certain class, and so most coaches want their participants, their athletes, their wrestlers to be in the top of their class, and so that can be 3 to 4, 5 pounds that they have to work diligently not to get above. And we've treated many men, young men, later older men, that it started out with like I said, with playing athletics. Tennis players, have fought their weight, and so but wrestlers is the one that comes to my mind, and we've treated quite a few wrestlers that were, on wrestling teams in high school, very competitive. Like I said, we don't have it here in our part of the country, but it's very popular in other parts. So some of the symptoms are for obese men or for the overweight, because that's what we're dealing with the most, folks, is obesity, and no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to talk about it, and people will kind of laugh, and men laugh at themselves, that they'll have this big stomach, and they will say gross things like, "Well, I'm just building a tool shed," whatever, and then they'll say things like, and there's TV commercials that, where this man was asking someone, "Honey, does this make my butt look big?" Making fun of men who are overweight. And it is a real problem, but it's a hard problem for men to address. So the symptoms of overweight or obesity is, one of the guidelines is attempting to diet frequently. Diets do not work. We go on a diet in order to go off of a diet. So diets don't work. I can tell you a lot of diets where you can lose a lot of weight in a short period of time. I would did that 5 different times, but then I'd gain it back. Except the last time I didn't, but 4 times I'd lose 100, 125 pounds, 140, and gain it back within the same year. So that can apply to men or women, but attempting to diet frequently, always going on a diet. And I see men doing this, and then, this is much like women also, but fasting after a binge, where they'll overeat, and then maybe try to go a day or so fasting, not eating anything. And then obese men struggling with depression, anxiety, and again, that isolation that I talked about. They don't have anyone to talk to about it, because how many guys stand around and talk about, my weight is really bothering me, or I have sure gained some weight. I need to get this off. Women, we are more free to talk about it, and guys are not. And if they do talk about it, they talk about it in a joking way. And that hurts my heart when I hear that, because I make up, because I am, recovering from compulsive overeating and obesity. I ate myself up to 287 pounds. So when I hear them joking about it, I think I make up that they're crying on the inside. I don't know. But anyway, they do struggle with depression, anxiety, and isolation, and feeling out of control of a binge. We've treated guys that and I was a volume eater. I had to have a lot of food, folks, a lot of it. And I've heard first steps of men that we have treated and the volumes of food that they eat. And once they start on a binge, how they can't stop it. And then they try to control the binge. And usually you can't control the binge until the binge is over. You got to play it out to the end and then go through that guilt and remorse and thinking, why did I do this one more time? Why did I do this? And then feeling disgusted with their weight and appearance. There again, men don't talk about this very much, but they feel it on the inside. I believe they do feel it on the inside. And then what will happen sometimes is they, like I said, keep it on the inside and can break down in stress-related illnesses. And I believe it can be a forerunner for alcoholism. If they've got that brain chemistry of an addict, I've treated a lot of guys that their eating disorder or their overeating started before they picked up a drink, and then that just added to it, and they feel very disgusted with themselves and how they look and their appearance and trying to buy clothes. Guys don't talk about that. Women, we talk about clothes and sizes and, that famous deal, does my butt look too big? Do I look fat in this? That is part of women's eating disorders a lot of times, but I believe women in general, we have more freedom to talk about, or we take more freedom to talk about our looks and our size. And so what happens then with guys, they get into moodiness, they get very moody. And then they start eating in secret and hide wrappers. They'll hide wrappers from their wives, from their kids. Now, women do too. I'm not saying this is just the guys, but guys do this because of they're embarrassed by how much they eat sometimes. And then, one of the things that they'll do is, they're going to turn over a new leaf. So they'll go on kind of a strict plan. Maybe they go to a gym. They'll get the gym, somebody to put them on a strict plan. And that means low carbs or no carbs. Which carbs, we all need some healthy carbs because that is what feeds the brain chemistry. I mean, we've got to have healthy carbs for our nervous system and our brain. All foods are essential. We don't need to rule out any food groups. Now I will tell you, sugar is not a food group. I hate to tell you, it is not, has no nutrients in it. Sugar is not a food group. So when you rule out sugar in your meal plan, you're not ruling out a category of food. So one of the things that they'll get into, and we see this in guys, maybe they come for codependency, or maybe they come for sex addiction, or maybe they come for whatever reason that they come into treatment for. Very few of them present for an eating disorder. Now, some that are severe bulimics. I had one guy that I thought he was going to have to knock me upside the head to get that he had bulimia. I thought he was joking. I thought he was making fun. I don't know. I won't go into all of that. But we did admit him for treatment, and he was suffering from, he taught me a lot to take men serious, that sometimes they'll joke about things that are really serious. So anyway, let's get back to going to the gym. Okay, they're going to turn over a new leaf. They go to the gym. They get on a program. Maybe the weight people will put them on a pretty restricted diet. They'll put them on all different types of supplements and shakes and this and that. Diet pills. Now, I will tell you, your men will get into diet pills a lot of times more than women will. Now, women will go to doctors and be honest and talk about their symptoms. And if the doctor offers a diet pill, a lot of women will take it. Men have shame about asking for diet pills from a doctor. Some will, but most of them won't. But they do a lot of over-the-counter pills, diet pills. They can get a lot of it at the gym. They will get into steroids, and when they do that, it can be I'm just losing all train of thought. It can be a gateway drug into drug addiction using drugs. So I hope this has helped to raise the awareness of that there are men who have eating disorders. They do have eating disorders, and some men will have, I'm not that overweight, and maybe they'll be 30, 40, 50 pounds overweight. And, think about picking up a cement block that weighs 30, 40, 50 pounds and carrying that around every day. Hold it up to your chest and carry it around every day. Every day, pick that up, that block, that cement block that weighs 30, 40, 50 pounds, and see how your body feels and how long can you carry that before your body begins to break down. and how the body begins to break down is the organs are overused, and we began to break down on the inside with stress-related illnesses, and so there are lots of similarities between women with eating disorders and men with eating disorders. But I think the primary difference is, number one, they have a hard time asking for help. There's still a lot of shame around it, and that and I will tell you, there's not a lot of treatment. There's not a lot of treatment options around for men. Now we treat men here. We treat all addictions here at Shades of Hope. And we do treat men right along with women, and we point out the differences. There are differences in treating a man with an eating disorder and treating a woman. There's not a lot of difference, but there is some, a few things that are tweaked. There are some things different. And another thing is they stay out too long before they ask for help. So if you know of anyone that is, can be a young college kid, it can be any age, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you, there's a big population past 50 with men that start eating disorders, much like with women. But be aware of family members, friends. When you see them losing a lot of weight, it could be anorexia. But ask questions, ask the right questions, not in a condescending or blaming way, just in a loving way. Or when you see them gaining weight, I'll tell you, people come more near saying something if people have lost weight. When you gain weight or when you're overweight, it's like people don't see you. They will never say. I never had one person ever in my life, and I'm not exaggerating, say anything about you need some help. How can I help you? I mean, no one ever said that. Now, people would laugh at me behind my back, or I'd walk down the mall and kids would say fatty, fatty too before, or kids in school made fun of me. But I really never had anyone to my memory that mentioned that I could get help from overeating. And my weight, and it's like, and it is hard, folks, to say something to an overweight person about their weight because we don't want to hurt their feelings, and if I think if you had a loved one that was falling down drunk or was periodically getting in jail for being drunk or using drugs, or they were showing huge signs and symptoms of drug addiction or alcoholism, I think you'd be, loving enough to either do an intervention, do something to get them help. That's not true with obese people. I think in all the years we've been here, maybe I've had two obese people, women that have had, their families have done interventions on them. Now, if you're anorexic or if they know that you're bulimic, yeah, they'll do an intervention in a heartbeat. But it saddens me about obesity that it is it's almost not even talked about. It's like a subject that elephant, literally the elephant in the living room, that no one wants to talk about because they say they don't want to hurt their feelings. Well, I'm here to tell you, hurt their feelings. You can't no one can hurt another person's feelings without their permission. And a lot of times, obese people carry so much shame around. But if you could lovingly say, have you thought about getting help? or even getting the family together and doing an intervention, whether it's man or woman, on a person with an eating disorder. Like I said, people with anorexia, their doctor's either going to say something or they'll send them to treatment. Do you know very few obese people are ever sent to treatment by doctors? What they will do is recommend the weight loss surgery, and insurance will pay for it. So I guess that's my soapbox, really, is obesity. And obesity in men is prevalent as it is with women, and it is growing in our United States. Another thing, I see a lot of good recovering alcoholic drug addict men that particularly your drug addicts will, lose weight there in their, their weight will go down there in their drug addiction, come into treatment or go into treatment somewhere and get into the program, and then they start ballooning up. They switch from alcohol to food. Now, right at first, an alcoholic needs to be refed. Alcohol, a lot of alcoholics suffer from malnutrition, but then after a while, they will switch the drug from alcohol to food, and we see it all the time where they blow up, blow up, blow up. We've had them die. I mean, I've seen them, my home group die of heart attacks or get real sick with, the organs begin to break down. So I just want to talk about this subject of men with eating disorders because I think it is one that goes unaddressed a lot. I don't know that it's that unnoticed, but it's very, not addressed. And if you have a teenager or a young person or anyone in your life that is losing a lot of weight that's noticeable, or if you realize that they are bulimics, please do not wait until it progresses because it will get worse. And like I said, the reason that the success rate is not as high with men as it is with women because they stay out too long before they seek treatment. And usually the only reason they seek treatment is the family does finally get involved, and they'll get the doctors involved in that type of thing. So I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, I'm sure would attempt to answer them. And like I said, I really have a heart for working with anyone with any eating disorder because it just takes over your entire life. And then I'll tell you, as parents, we teach it to our children. We teach our children what to do and what not to do. And that's what I'm going to be talking about Thursday. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about relapse with eating disorders. What's a slip and what is a relapse? Because relapse and an eating disorder looks different, has different signs and symptoms, has some of the same similarities as drugs and alcohol, but it still has, there's a difference, there's some differences. So I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow on Wednesday on Zoom, and so that will take the place of this video that we're doing. And then on Thursday, I want to talk about eating disorders in children and how young they start and what parents can do. I'd give anything in the world if my parents had, of course, they were so knee-deep in their own problems that they didn't have eyes for anyone but each other and themselves. But I'd give anything if someone had noticed the massive amount of weight that I was carrying and could have gotten me help. I never got help till I started seeking it myself. And so that's what I'll be doing Thursday, is talking about eating disorders in children and how parents can help. And then on Friday, I want to be talking about what to do in recovery. We can talk about the problem till hell freezes over. But the thing about it is, we need to talk about what to do in recovery. So we'll be doing that. And I see Shelley on.
You want me to read that?
Yeah, I want to, yeah.
Okay, it says, I remember Alan. He was Carmen's husband. I just want you to know that what you're saying is everything I've experienced and believe in. I always refer anyone I know to Shades. Most people I know are sober but suffer from codependency and eating disorders. Men have the most difficulty with their denial. I am so thankful for you, treatment, and recovery.
Oh, thank you, Shelley. Shelley was, I started the eating disorder unit at a drug alcohol treatment center called the Serenity House in town after I got back from treatment. Kept it there for a year, and then I knew I wanted to treat all addictions, and we moved out here. And so Alan was a hip, slick, and cool therapist, young man that I came from California, and I hired him to be a therapist. And his wife, Carmen, had lived in LA, and she was always kind of pudgy. She was little, but she tried to get on the police force, and she didn't make the weight check. So she went on a diet anyway. Long story short, she became anorexic, and there was no treatment or anything, and probably didn't have any money either way. But they had a friend called Michelle that was a PhD, and she was also recovering from an eating disorder. So, and I'm telling you this story, it has an ending. It's the reason I'm telling it. And so Carmen lived with Michelle for a year, and she got in really good recovery. And, Carmen came here. She helped me. Helped me start the unit at the Serenity House, and came out here and stayed with us for a year, and so did Alan. And I knew, when you have a knowing about something, one of the things that I wanted to do was have a non-smoking unit. And Carmen and Alan both smoked, and Alan, they both said, "Oh, we're quitting." Carmen said, "I need to quit. My mother died of lung cancer at age 40, and I have a fear that I'm going to die, and I'm going to quit smoking." And she did, until she didn't. I walked into work one day and immediately smelled smoke, and went to her office and opened the door, and she was sitting there smoking. Not only was she smoking, but she was smoking with a client. And that was back in my raging years, and I raged, and she gathered up her stuff, and she left, and I never saw her again. Now, later on, several years later, she contacted me that she had cancer, that she was dying. She wanted to come see me, and she made her amends. She said she had already intended to quit and go back to Indiana, and that was her way of being able to tell me. She knew that what my reaction would be, and that she'd have a reason to quit. And it's sad. I just get sad. When she left, she never went to another meeting. And this is Carmen's, what she said. And then her sons came to see us. And those sons, while they were here, watched both parents be in really good recovery. Long story short, Carmen died of cancer. Her husband, Alan, I was on a show one day in New York City, and I can't remember the name of which talk show it was, but I always give credit where credit's due, and I always mention Alan, because God working through Alan saved my life, because I don't believe if I'd gone through treatment, I don't believe I would be alive today. So I had shared about Alan and how he intervened on my eating disorder, and 4 days later I was sitting in a treatment center that saved my life. And so while I was on that show, Alan called the show, and he told me that things were not good for him, and that he was living in Reno. And then several years later, his sons notified me that Alan died on the streets of Reno as a drug addict. That is what these diseases do, folks. The bottom line of any disease is death. And so those were wonderful people, wonderful, and had good recovery until they forgot they had a disease. They quit doing the things that we all have to do every day for recovery. So let's see if there's another question, comment.
Michelle Reed Long, I've passed my compulsive overeating disorder on to my 12-year-old son. Breaks my heart to see him struggle with his weight.
I hear that, and we can pass it on, because children hear very little that we say. They don't listen to those lectures. Those you should not, and don't do that. What they see is our behavior, and that's what they emulate. They'll either turn out the same or opposite. So one of the things I would recommend for you, Michelle. You're right at the turning point here with the 12-year-old. By the time he's 14, those earlobes are going to go up and cover up his ears, and he's going to quit hearing anything that you say. And so I'm going to be talking Thursday about eating disorders with children. I hope you'll join us, and maybe I can give you some tips and some, help on how to work with your son. And I'll tell you, the number one thing is get help yourself. Get help yourself. And one of the things that we do here, not everybody needs inpatient treatment. So we do a 4-day intensive. I've been doing it for like over 30 years. We do one a month. And they're 12-hour days, but I'll tell you, you get a lot in those hours. And it's not just lectures. We do some information, but we get to the core of what is driving any addiction. So that's a consideration to do that 4-day intensive. So there's lots of options of things that you can do. And he's at the age that you wait till he's 13, that he's already being made fun of, I'm sure, and that goes to the heart of a child. So let's hope you can join us Thursday as we talk about childhood eating disorders. Thanks. And anyone else?
I think that is it.
Okay.
Janice just got on.
So, morning, Janice. So I've enjoyed visiting with each of you, and so if you heard anything, pass it on to someone else. The main thing is getting the information out to people that eating disorders are diseases, and the good news is they can be treated, and there's recovery, and that is the good news, and that's why I keep doing what I'm doing, and Shades of Hope keeps doing what we're doing. There is hope for recovery. So have a great day, and we'll talk tomorrow at 10 on Zoom. Thanks.
And Facebook Live. We'll have it on Facebook Live.
And we'll have it on Facebook
Live.
Live.
If they can join Zoom.
But if you can join Zoom,
see your
Zoom.
face.
And yeah, because I'll get to see your face. If not, it'll be on Facebook Live. But I hope to see you in the morning at 10. Yeah, I'd like to see all of you face to face. Janice, you can join us too. Thank y'all.